Hello, and thank you for serving as a mentor teacher or a cooperating teacher, as it's also known, this semester. We really appreciate you opening your classroom to one of our future teachers. We know that that's a lot of effort on your part to share your students and your classroom with our teacher. But we know that the modeling and the feedback that you will give this teacher candidate throughout the semester will be a great impact on that future teacher's success. So we're going to go through several things and show you what's available to help you as you do this. We do have a student teacher handbook website. Now it has a lot of information on it. Most of that information is for our student teachers to review, as well as our university supervisors. But we have one page that is specifically for the mentor teacher. And as you can see, this has lots of different links, even a menu over to the side. But again, this mentor page really has a lot of the things you'll need, everything you would need. Gives you kind of a brief overview of week 1, week 2, and then all the following weeks throughout the placement. It also gives you a little guidance about our Kentucky Framework rubric that we use and some of the other things that are available to you. We've linked this mentor page on the email where we sent you this video. So it is available to you at any time. And it also has like the written weekly feedback form, which is the only form you're going to have to fill out. I'm going to show you that in a minute. This one will ask us to make a copy, so I won't click it here. But you can click that and make a copy each time you want to do one for your student teacher, or you can bookmark it or whatever. These other documents down here, the midterm progress report and the final evaluation forms, those are done by our university supervisor. They'll be filling those out, but they will ask for your input. Then these other things kind of give you guide. You can help your student teacher with some guidance on these, on ideas. So I wanted to show you that so you knew where that was, and your student teacher has that. You are a coach. Essentially, you're coaching someone all semester, and we just ask a few things to help make sure that that's a successful partnership. Please share your expectations up front. Be really clear with the student teacher about, timelines and about dates and about your procedures and your policies and what you would expect from them in your classroom. If you want them to interact with students immediately, start, tell them that. I think sometimes student teachers don't know when to jump in. So I think clear expectations and clear communication is really helpful. And then we ask that you be really intentional and specific with your feedback. We know it's not always easy to give constructive feedback, but that's really important to help them grow, along with positive, affirmations as well. But we really do want our students to know how to improve, and they won't know unless you are really specific. And then we just ask that you include them in every opportunity available. If there is an ARC meeting, please ask the permission of those parents that our student teachers can be in those meetings and learning. We want them to participate in all PLCs and team meetings and duty. You learn about how to do bus duty or car duty, all the things that are going to help them learn and help them grow so that they're successful their first year in the classroom by themselves. Our student teachers have some specific expectations that we have made clear to them, that they are to be in school whenever you are. So, they need to, if you get there early to do a duty, they should get there early. If you have an afternoon duty or an afternoon meeting, they should be staying with you. You can choose with them when you want to plan, which day you might want to stay after to plan, or maybe you do it before, or maybe a certain day during planning. Work that out with them, but they are expected. Sometimes student teachers do have jobs, but we have told them that those jobs really, unfortunately, cannot hinder their student teaching placement. We want them to learn and be as active in that school community as possible. We want them participating in all activities. If you have a professional development day, please tell your student teacher they need to be there with you. They learn just as much from that. So we don't want, we've told them they're expected to be at all those days. The very first few weeks, we do ask that you help that student teacher acclimate to your school. Sometimes even giving them a small space in the room just to put where they put their things, or during planning where they could work. I think if you go ahead and set a tentative schedule with them about, I like to plan on Tuesdays and Thursdays, at this time, or my team meets at certain times. Give them those things up front, help them, really feel comfortable if you can. I think that knowing those things ahead of time helps student teachers greatly. We also want the student teacher co-teaching as much as possible. So as much as you feel comfortable in the beginning, let them, jump in and take a small group or a center, or let them, be interacting with certain students that need support. You may have to point that out to them at the beginning, but we want them to really start being a team teacher with you as much as you feel comfortable letting them. We do ask them to get videotaped in the first couple of weeks. So if they can take over one small lesson, a mini lesson, or something, to videotape themselves, we want them to use that to help create their professional growth plan, where they will choose one goal from domain 2 and one goal from domain 3 on the framework. So we would ask that you maybe help encourage them to get that video done the first few weeks, and maybe you could videotape for them. Please help them choose some good classrooms to go into that you think might help them see maybe a different teaching style, maybe somebody that's really strong in classroom management, maybe somebody that has a really cool science engagement activity. But they're supposed to visit six classrooms throughout the semester, 3 per 8 weeks approximately. And if you could help them choose who they're going to see, I think that who might help give them some new ideas and new strategies. The timeline to release responsibilities to your student teacher. Again, this is your classroom. We know that different mentor cooperating teachers have different levels of feeling about how soon they want to give up things. But the goal would be that our student teacher, week 1 or definitely by week 2, take over at least one lesson or one small group or one small part of your day, and then gradually give them more responsibilities as they lead up to a solo week. So every student teacher solo weeks, they have 2 full weeks that they are totally responsible to do all the planning and all the teaching. And that may be, if you have a student teacher only for 8 weeks, they're only going to do one of those weeks with you, and they'll do 1 week in the second 8-week placement. If that student teacher is with you all 16 weeks, then they're going to do 2 weeks of solo time in your classroom, preferably 2 weeks together. We think that gives them even more time to learn, but if it's 2 separate weeks, that's okay too. Again, it's your classroom, you can guide that. We do ask our university supervisor to come observe several times. So we like for them to come once during the solo week if at all possible, but if it doesn't work out that way, that's okay too. Lesson plans. So when you ask your student teacher to take over a certain subject area or a certain group or a certain block of time, they are then responsible for doing all the planning for that. You can guide them, you can offer them at first some supports of what the strategies or the standards. Definitely they would need to know which standards you're teaching and all of that. And you can guide them through some of the things that you use, but we do want the student teacher to start learning how to plan without you just giving them the plan. So when they take over something, they're taking over the planning of that. Now, these plans can be in whatever format that you deem necessary for you to review to feel comfortable with them teaching. You'll have to give them some time frame of when you want those. Do you want them the day before? I think you just be upfront with that person, but they shouldn't be walking in and you not knowing what they're going to teach. If I was my classroom, I would want to know at least a day before what they're going to do. During those 4 formal observations, 2 during each 8 weeks, the university supervisor will require them a 48-hour notice. So they're gonna tell the student teacher, I have to have your lesson plan 48 hours before you are going to teach it. And if something changes, university supervisors are always good to know that if they have to change something after they've already submitted that, but because of the student's needs. But they are going to use the actual lesson plan format of a K-TIP type, the old K-TIP, but it's much more detailed. And the student teacher does have to do that when they are doing the formal lessons. So co-teaching, I mentioned, I wanted our student teachers really co-teaching with you. Your students are going to have the benefit of 2 adults all day in their classroom, and our student teachers need to be participating in whatever way you want them to. We have all the co-teaching strategies are listed on the teaching website if you want to see them. You know what they are. But, we also ask that you do this. Our goal is for our student teacher to not take away from your students, but to help. So if you ever need to jump in or we would hope you're co-teaching quite often with them, and you do whatever makes you feel comfortable with your students. An important reminder though, we mentioned solo weeks and we mentioned them taking over classes and taking over the planning of it, the teaching of those. Legally, student teachers are not allowed by state regulation to be left alone. So they're not, if something was to happen in that classroom and you weren't in there and the student teacher was in charge of the students, they are not legally responsible. So please keep that in mind. We know that it's nice to leave student teachers sometimes for a few minutes to let them feel the feeling of you not being in the room. But really legally, they are not supposed to be, unless maybe they're hired that day as the substitute teacher. So please that's just a friendly reminder about that regulation. Weekly feedback is really important. Your feedback is probably the most important feedback that they're going to receive the whole 8 weeks or 16 weeks they're in your classroom. The university supervisor's seen snapshots. We know that. So we really value your input and we need that weekly. That we do use the Kentucky Framework for Teaching, the Danielson framework that all Kentucky public school teachers are evaluated on. So it should look very familiar to you. It is the responsibility of the student teacher to upload the weekly feedback that you give them into their Google site, which we'll talk about in a minute. Here is the form. So this is the form that you're going to use weekly, and it has all 4 domains. Now, you don't have to give them weekly feedback on every single one of these indicators or every domain. You can pick and choose like the ones you want to talk about each week or focus on each week, particularly classroom environment, instruction, I'm sure are going to be the big ones, classroom management and instruction. But we do ask that you use this form and at least weekly, that they get some definite suggestions over here in the comment side and that they get a rating over here. We want, and you can just pick and choose, like I said, but over the time they're in your room, eventually they get some feedback on each of these. So if you just focus on classroom management and instruction one week, maybe the next week you give a little feedback on their planning or vice versa. But we do hope that you'll do that each week and give that to the student teacher to put in their Google site. We ask that you remember that developing is not a bad word. We teach the student teachers this. Developing, they are developing. They're very new to what they're doing. They may even be ineffective at it at first. The goal for them is to be developing and maybe accomplished by the end. You might see some exemplaries in there, but really at the beginning, they're definitely developing, and they can even pass student teaching just by being developing because we know they've got a lot of growth. But here is the thing. Any kind of ineffective or developing rating that you give the student teacher, please give them some sort of intentional suggestion or specific feedback on ways they can improve. Help them really know what to do next. And I think that's real important for them to be successful. The attendance policy, they are probably in your classroom for the whole semester or 8 weeks, there'll be half of this, but it's about 70 days, but give or take, sometimes it's more than 70 or 35 if it's half-time, 8-week placement. But if they're going to any professional development day with you or any of the seminar days on campus with me that I'll show you or with their instructor for their teacher work sample, or if you have to go into NTI, if your district has a snow day or a weather day or something, if they participate in NTI with you, all of those days can count towards their days as instructional days. They are given 3 days to use as needed for if it's illness or if they have to take a praxis exam because we find they're not offered on Saturdays for whatever reason. If they have an interview, they have a family emergency, we do allow 3 days absence, and they'll still have that. We built those in, so they'll still have their 70+ days, even if they were to miss 3. Any days outside of 3 days have to be made up at the end of the semester. So if they're in an 8-week placement with you in the first 8 weeks, they may not make those days up, even if they miss them in yours. I'm sorry about that, but they may not make them up till the end. We do expect student teachers to be in the school the same hours as you. Again, the attendance policy means all day, every day, no exceptions. The seminar and teacher work sample days are 6 days this semester. They're all on a Friday. Some are, there's a couple in each month, it seems like, but please know that they're not going to be in your school on these days. They are not makeup days for them. They are going to be instructed that day, either through their SPED or SMED 489 class or EDU 489 class. And it is a teacher work sample, as well as we have several seminars that all of those things, their attendance at those are very important. They come to the Bowling Green campus on those 6 days. Actually, one of the days is a job fair. So 5 days they come for class, and then 1 day is a job fair. So we apologize that they're leaving your classroom on those days, but they are important part of their certification. Substitute teaching, you may have, and I would hope you would encourage your student teacher to get on the substitute list. The state has waived that regulation for the time being. We don't know how long that'll last, but right now student teachers can serve as substitute teachers if they are hired by your school district. So they cannot just sub for you because you're gone or somebody else is gone and they go sub in another classroom, unless they're officially hired by the school district to be an emergency sub. Now, there are some guidelines with this, and we have given you those in the email. We've given you a link to those where you can review them, and your student teachers have those and your school districts have those. Intermittent subbing means that they can sub a day here, a day there, up to 10 days, and then they get more permission if to do more. But a long-term position, sometimes maternity leaves or different things happen. When a school district reaches out to us, we try to work with them. It's on a case-by-case basis, though. It's not meant for every student teacher to do that. Not all would be successful or agree to it. But it can happen on a case-by-case basis, but we have to work directly with the principal about that. All subbing, however, has to happen in the school district that the student teacher is assigned to. So we have some student teachers that only sub when the mentor teacher is out that day. So that's one good reason you might want to get them on the sub list to help you. Every student teacher has a Google site that they have created to keep their sources of evidence in. And we ask you don't have any responsibility of uploading anything in that Google site. Everything is the student teacher's responsibility to upload. The university supervisor reviews this every time they observe. So when they formally observe, the university supervisor formally observes your student teacher, they're going to use what the student teacher put in this Google site to help them score domain 1 for lesson planning and domain 4 for professionalism, and reflection. Those things are documented in the evidence that is given in this Google site. We ask you to ask the student teacher every couple of weeks, say, let's look at this. Is there something we can upload in there that I could suggest to you? Because they do have a family communication log, a professional involvement log, things like that. They're doing things with you, or they're watching the way you communicate with families. Those types of things can be listed as evidence that they've learned about. But they need to put it in there. If it's not in there, it didn't happen. So this is really important. And so if you can help us encourage them to keep that updated. They do have a professional growth plan that the university supervisor will work with them on. You can be a part of that to help. So any way you can help them with that is great, but it is the student teacher's responsibility. The university supervisor will use those that evidence, like I said, to score domain 1 and 4. The university supervisor is going to ask for your input. And you may say, this student teacher is great at communicating with our kids, my students' families, through postcards and notes and things that she's sending home. Well, she has to document that in her sources of evidence, or it didn't happen, even though you said it did. That's just part of regulation. We have to be able to have that evidence on file for accreditation purposes. So we want the student teacher to get used to reflecting that way. Should there be any red flags along the way? I hope not. I hope you have such, and I anticipate, because 95, 99% of our student teachers go in there and do an awesome job. Others sometimes struggle in certain areas. Sometimes it's just something they maybe life circumstances, got it the best of them. But we need to know early. If you really are concerned in any way about any area, even the areas I didn't list here, but the big one sometimes is, tardiness or poor attendance. We need to know that ahead of time. Early on, we need to know. Now, we've asked our student teachers to tell you, the mentor teacher, and the university supervisor, anytime they're going to be out, they're supposed to notify you. But if it becomes, a real attendance issue or tardiness issue, we need to know that. If they're not prepared, if they're supposed to take over certain lessons and they're not prepared for you, please let us know. We want to know early. Poor communication, if they're not communicating with you about things, or you've given them good suggestions, intentional, specific feedback, and they still aren't progressing. We need you to speak up about that, or any other dispositional area. First person to reach out to would be the university supervisor, who would then reach out to our office to support you. Or you can reach the director, specifically, you can reach out to us and we will support you. We want our student teachers to be successful. So the earlier we know of any issues, the better. We also want to protect your classroom if you feel that your time and your students are being impacted by any of those things. Again, we don't anticipate that happening, but if it does, very occasionally there's a problem. So please let us know. Thank you again for all you do to model and grow our future teachers. We want to remind you there, and we'll put this in the email as well with this video, that you do get a tuition waiver here at Western with the Kentucky teacher discount as well, but you get a whole waiver. You get a 3-hour class per 8 weeks that you mentor a teacher. And then you also get a small stipend from us and a small stipend from EPSB. We wish it was more, but we do thank you for your time and your effort, and we just wish you the very best this semester. Again, feel free to reach out if you need our help. Thanks again, and we look forward to a great semester with you.